how is dating for you now, considering that you've really just come out?
I like finally lost my virginity. I did bottom, but I was tight, you know, obviously. Sure. Now I know the phrase when people are like, they need to get laid. I was like so happy.
Welcome to another episode of Primary Care. I'm your host, Dr. Hendricks. This episode of Primary Care is sponsored by Regiette Health. More than just an ED treatment.
We have Keke here from Netflix's Twentysomethings Austin. How is dating for you now, considering that you've really just come out, and how are you navigating it? What is it like?
I don't know if it's TMI, but like this last year, it was when I like finally like lost my virginity, and I awesome. But it was like so good and so bad.
It's always a little bad.
I just like realized I built sex up to be something. I just thought it was a scary like thing, and you don't talk about a lot of like males having sex growing up.
I know.
I didn't know how to do it. I was like, well, I didn't know like what it was entailed.
So I'll tell you my virginity loss story if you'll tell me yours.
Oh gosh. Okay. I haven't talked about this.
I haven't either. This is not okay. Okay. So I was in Orlando at a bar called Pulse. It was actually the bar that I went to the most growing up, and this is where the tragic terrorist attack happened, and now it's unfortunately closed. I'm not sure if you recall, back 40 plus people lost their lives, but I spent a huge amount of my time at Pulse. Like, that's kind of where I learned my queerness. The first time I seen drag queens, Angelica Sanchez, shout out to you if you're still out there. This was my first drag queen I ever saw. I love drag queens. But I remember my nails were black. I remember the day vividly. A friend of mine had convinced me that we should carry purses. I was 16, by the way. This is not a time when guys were carrying purses, but we were. But anyways, I met this guy. He was like 24. I was one of them, of course. I was like 19. Went back to his place and I was freaking out. My friend followed our car behind us, but like the guy didn't know, because I like rode with him back to his house, and we're like texting each other. I'm like, oh my God, he's gonna kill me. Oh my God, he's gonna kill me. I don't know what's gonna happen, right? I've never been with a person like that before. And so we get to his house, and ends up, I think after the morning after, I realized it was his parents' house. Because we go through like the back door, we go inside, and he has this like really interesting room. It was kind of like bohemian vibes. He totally smoked cigarettes in there, which at the time I was like smoking cigarettes too, because I was so adult at 16. I just anything to feel adult. And I remember Roseanne was playing on the TV.
Oh my gosh.
Which was a good sign for me. We start kissing and stuff, and then he's like, making the moves that we're gonna start doing things, and I'm like, oh my God, I don't know if I'm a top, am I a bottom? Like, when is this gonna happen? I'm literally 100 pounds soaking wet. He was like 6'5", big guy. I'm like, this is gonna be a disaster. Well, I don't think this would be fortunate for everyone. Everyone's different, but for me, it was fortunate because he ended up being a bottom. I think it's a little easier, your first experience topping, at least from my experience, because I didn't know what I was gonna do. I had no idea what bottoming until no one educated me. My friends never told me. We ended up having a fling for like a few times. We would hang out when I'd be in Orlando, and I was obsessed with him. I remember this was also the time Irreplaceable came out on the radio by Beyonce, and I would like cry, because he wouldn't return my calls.
This is speaking to me. This is helping me.
You don't have to tell your story, but if you want to tell us yours.
Because I haven't been able to talk about this, so this feels like therapy. It was a guy who like I kind of knew, and my therapist calls it limerence, but like I had pictured him like the best version of himself, but he's not necessarily that person.
I do that all the time.
And my friends always tell me, they're like, that's your strength, but it's gonna hurt you in the end. And so like I thought he was like the hottest guy, the smartest, the bravest. And now that I think about it, I'm like, he's not those things. We went for drinks, and like we were so open, and we like came back to my place, and we watched Euphoria, and I was like the first episode.
Oh my God, that'll get things spicy.
And then like saying like, I always wonder like, am I a top, am I a bottom? People I'm like assume I'm a bottom. I'm like, I feel like I can like surprise people,
everyone assumes I'm a bottom 24/7. I embrace it. I love it. I've been called a twink since I can remember. I hope it continues.
Oh my God.
Sorry.
No, it was like the funnest night of my life. We were running around naked, like we were trying different things, and like I remember like oh gosh, I don't know if I should say this. I guess I will.
We can get it
I'm like, I did bottom, but I was like tight, obviously, because I was like new, and so like he was trying different things, which I appreciated.
Yeah.
And then he ended up like leaving, and so like I slept alone. I remember I woke up and I was like, now I know what the phrase when people are like, they need to get laid. I was like so happy. Like I was like,
yes.
I remember I went to go get Chipotle, and I was like skipping, growing. Like
Yes.
I was like, I just grew like maybe an attachment.
That's a good thing.
He like
okay.
did not want to talk about it after, and I was like,
That's okay.
And I wanted to bring up like, I'm not expecting anything. Like
Right.
that was fun. I don't regret it. I hope you don't regret it. I'd
Yeah.
be down to do it again. But like, and I also knew like this person was not in a place for a relationship, but like they did not want to talk about it, which hurt my feelings because it made me feel like they didn't want to hook up again. Like there's something wrong with me, and I was like, it was my first time. Maybe I was bad, but like I can get better. You know.
Those are all normal thoughts, I think. And I think, too, that's really not anything on you. That's on that other person. It's really unfortunate that people can't be a little bit more upfront with how we feel, because I'm sure you would have much rather heard, hey, I want to be single, but I had a lot of fun. Let's talk about it because I know that was your first time, or because let's just talk about it. At least leave that door open. It doesn't harm that person to at least text you back and explain how they felt and, give you reassurance too. But these things happen to everyone. It's certainly happened to me so many times. I think my number one advice for people who are just coming out and just exploring their sexuality and have their heart on their sleeves like I do, you do, keep it there. Because the most fun you're going to have in your life is those giddy moments, those hookups where you are the one who is more infatuated than them. And I know a lot of us think that, I need to make that other person like me more. I need to play hard to get. That takes away your own fun. Enjoy it. You're there. There's nothing better than feeling like you have butterflies for somebody, And for me, looking back, that was the whole fun of hooking up. Is like, it's really about you and yourself. The other person is there obviously to give you pleasure too and to enjoy but if that's on them, they can contribute as much or as little. If you find them attractive and you're feeling giddy and you're in the moment, I think it should just be all about you. And if they want to add to that after the fact, that's up to them. Otherwise, thank you for your time. I enjoyed myself. We were safe. We did all the things we should do, and on to the next.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
That like speaks to me.
It's really hard not to get jaded, of course, because our emotions are painful. Looking back, whenever I was single, I would always try to repress those and avoid the pain and avoid the letdown and feeling insecure. But that was all me. That person didn't make me feel that way. I was bringing those things out of myself and allowing myself to feel insecure and to feel not worthy and to feel not good enough. That person didn't say any of those things to me, and their response was usually minimal, like yours. Like they would either, blow me off or just be like, I'm not into it. And then I would overthink and take myself on this spiral journey of like Krispy Kreme donuts, crying, Bridget Jones' Diary, all of that.
No, that was me.
But I look back at those moments and I had so much fun eating my donuts, crying. And, it's a way of growing up. It's a way of learning how to deal with these emotions. But always remember that like majority of the time when you have a negative thought, it's you putting it on yourself. And if it's someone else, who cares what they think, at the end of the day. But always think like, where's this coming from? Like, am I putting this on myself? Am I feeling insecure about myself? Or did that person actually say something to me? Because obviously you guys had a great time, and I would just focus on that and focus on how you can continue having those great times with whoever you're with.
Yes.
And it's always great too to like obviously go into a relationship smart, but why not feel like the person you're with is the most amazing thing? That's a great feeling too. You want to feel like you're with the best, the smartest, the bravest, the hottest, at least while you're there. When they move on, then you can find the next one, Yeah. I think I got really biased and really jaded after going through a lot of those similar experiences, and I think it took me out of how much fun I used to have. So don't let people take your fun away, because that's all you. You get to decide how much fun everything is that you do. No one can really take that from you unless you let them.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
I needed to hear that.
Yeah.
You do make me think, because like during it, I was like, I thought it was the end of the world. When I told my friend on the phone who knew me like while I was closeted, she's like, you're talking about like hooking up with a guy. Like rewind 2 years ago.
It wouldn't even be a thing.
Yeah, like you never even like dated, kissed a guy, and like now, you went all the way. And I'm like, you're right. It's just like, just in the moment, it's hard.
I think too, talking about sex is really challenging because majority of my conversations about my encounters have also, because I mentioned I haven't had a lot of queer friends, been with like straight girls who have a great perspective, and I love their perspective, but it's completely different than ours.
Yes.
There's just a lot to explore when you're queer and having sex, and I think if you go to a straight resource, sometimes they're not going to be able to really even give you a splash, because a lot of my friends who are straight are very vanilla, just like me. But I'm trying to break out of that. I've been queer for quite a while. I'm ready to like, you know, we had someone on our podcast recently who owned a sex shop, and I'm like, yeah, me and my partner were like, we're not going crazy, but we're like trying to figure out some fun stuff to do because we're monogamous and things get monotonous. You know, we want to keep it fun. It hasn't yet, but we want to keep it fun and spicy and do that. Enjoy it, you know, explore while you can and have fun. I think it's incredible to come out at 16 or 26. You can literally make it however you want it to be, and just don't let anyone give you rules and try to make you follow what they did. Try not to overthink.
I'll try.
How does your family feel about church and you? Like, how have they digested you being out?
I told them that Thanksgiving, like the year before I went on the show, I remember like my whole family was there, and I kind of blacked out
at Thanksgiving?
Yes, because I never go home.
Take your moment.
And I was like, this is the time.
This is my moment.
I like blacked out. I remember just talking, and then my mom like was crying, which made me cry, and my sister was like, she's not crying because she's sad. And then my dad stood up and like gave me a hug, and I was so thankful. Like,
wow.
Normally my mom is like 100 questions, and I'm like not ready for them, and so I didn't want that. I was like, I don't even know the answers. I'm not ready. But she did it. It was kind of like, probably because it was so awkward and unexpected. They didn't really ask me much, and then we didn't really talk about it. And then the show came out, and I remember it came in like 2 drops. I had dinner with them between the drops. And I remember at dinner, and like no one's talking about it. It's like, you just watched my show, and I kissed a boy on like the first drop. I think finally I brought it up, like, so are we gonna talk about the show? And then they were like, everyone opened up. My mom was convinced I was engaged to the guy I was like on the show with. I'm like, I would tell you if I was engaged. Like, no, you wouldn't. They would make you not tell me. But now my family like overplays it. Like, we'll be like watching a commercial, like, oh my gosh, did you see that gay couple in the back in like the bleachers? I'm like, oh my gosh, like, you don't have to bring up like, it's like so awkward to me because I'm like, I don't want to talk about that
already. I told my mom, you know I'm gay, right? Literally, that's what I said. You know I'm gay, right? She's like, you're not gay. You dated girls in high school and middle school. I'm like, come on. I literally at 6 and 7 years old was putting a towel on my head and dancing to the Spice Girls in front of you, like literally making her sit on my bed with 2 girls who were my best friends, and we would put on a show for her weekly. I was obsessed with Britney Spears to the point that like I almost wanted to dress like her. She knew, but it was just something that she was so against, and so she thought she was tailoring me to be this person that she put a lot of work into for 18 plus years, and then that person died literally. With my dad and my stepmom and his mom. With my partner, we've been together about 4 years. When it got serious, I never told him I was gay. I just started bringing him around, and I was like, this is Gabriel, he's here, and he was always there. So they kind of got it. We never had the conversation, but
so on the show, unexpectedly my grandma passed.
I'm so sorry.
Actually I got to FaceTime my grandma before she passed. She like passed that day, and so then I had to leave the show to like, you know, go to the funeral. And when I was back home, my mom was like, when I was with grandma, she's like, I gotta tell you something about Keanu. And she's like, what? Then I think my grandma said something like, he lives with a man or something along those lines. And my mom was like, no. And she's like, he's gay. And that my grandma had said, so like, we're still gonna love him. And I didn't realize I needed that. And like, she passed knowing I was gay, but I never knew like she knew. I appreciated my mom doing that. Yeah. Like for me.
Incredible. I think your mom is incredible for doing that, because I think a lot of people look back a lot of times and say, I wish that person would have known before they passed, just so I could know their reaction. Personally, I try to avoid thoughts and processes like that just in my life in general, like what if I, or you know, had I done something or had someone known and they're gone now, because there's nothing we can do to change that. But I think it's incredible that she knew that that would be important, you know, because a lot of parents, they wouldn't even think that, you know, especially they would try to avoid anything inflammatory around someone who may be passing soon or sick, you know, and for her to be like, no, I know this is important. She's a super mature lady. She's awesome. So maybe I'll get to meet her one day.
Like you said earlier, where these outside factors are so much more important than coming out. And I'm like, that was 100% me. Like, but it was like, you're happy outside, but when you're by yourself, you're like miserable. And it's like, that's not.
And eventually,
worth it. Like you need to like, you know, that's, I think eventually, usually I guess people's like breaking point to come out.
Exactly. Actually, when I lived in Fort Myers, where I did my residency after I finished medical school, I went to this gym, LA Fitness, and I met this older guy. Usually, I think most gay guys, when you meet an older guy, you find them quite, especially at the gym, you're like, you're kind of creepy. Like, what's going on? What's going on? But he was actually super, super nice. And so he ended up telling me that he had multiple children. He'd been married before, but he thinks he might be gay. And he's always kind of felt that way. And he's finally felt free enough to where those outside factors of being a dad and being a husband, because he's divorced now, or was at the time, and all his family stuff, it wasn't feeding him anymore. He was looking to be more, aligned with who he was and who he wanted to be. There's no one way fits all,
Yes. I always tell people it's never too late.
Yeah. Hey folks, my podcast Primary Care is sponsored by Rougiette Ready, the latest pharmaceutical advancement in erectile dysfunction. This is a sublingual compounded treatment using 3 ingredients, sildenafil, tadalafil, and apomorphine, and it works up to 5 times faster than pills and chewables. We give you a promo code Primary Care for 20% off your first order and free shipping. Now, let's get back to the content. Being on a Netflix show. Obviously, you went from Arkansas to Netflix show. So what has that been like? Like, do you get to go to events? Do you get invited places? Do you feel like a celebrity?
This is always so awkward for me to talk about because I always tell people I'm normal, but like last Saturday when I went out, people point at you and they're like, you're famous, and like I never want to call myself famous because I'm not like an actor or singer.
You could be. You never know.
But definitely Austin, since we filmed here, I feel like every day I see someone that knows me, and I'm so thankful because growing up in Texas, I knew Austin was very much like, don't make this LA, don't move here. So when the show is coming out, I'm like, we could get hate. They could be like, why are y'all here? But it was the opposite. Everyone's like, you belong here. Like I get way more support than hate.
That's awesome.
If there are like influencer events or events in Austin, I do get invited, and I think that's
so
wild.
cool.
I think the most wild is like social media. Like I'm a huge Real Housewives fan. I think like 5 of them follow me back, and I was like, oh my gosh, like
so cool.
I DMing Lisa Barlow right now.
Yeah.
Like it's just like so wild.
Yeah.
Or you go to events and you see these famous like actors, actress, and someone's like, you want to meet them? I'm like, oh my gosh, like what world am I living in?
I think it's so vulnerable to be putting yourself out there, and you deserve all the positive things that this leads for you. So
thank you.
It's awesome.
That means a lot. It's like being sensitive and vulnerable. I think it's always been seen or like as a weakness, and I realize I'm older. Like I'm glad I am that way because I got this from TikTok. But I meet people whose like emotional intelligence is like a carrot, and I'm like, people can't express like if they're upset or if they're like what's wrong. And I'm so glad I am able to relate to people. Like I don't have many talents, but I'm like that's maybe like
that's
my one gift.
True. That's not true. So this is my thing. You cannot say negative things about yourself because especially us overthinkers, it stays in the back of our head and we perpetuate that thought. You have many talents. It's kind of like what a therapist would call cognitive behavioral therapy. It's one of the most effective ways to treat depression or anxiety. It's retraining your thoughts and avoiding things that are negative, but it's also avoiding things that are just negative statements about yourself and observations about yourself because you're the only one who's listening.
When I'm the same as you, like it's always been hard. I don't know why. I'm like maybe because I'm weird. If I go to a straight bar, people are like, wow, like oh my gosh, like pictures, want to talk to you, everything. Whereas sometimes if I go to a gay bar, people may be visiting, they'll come say hi, but I feel like daggers in eyes or like hate. And I'm like also like proud I went on the show because like I'm probably not your standard American beauty, but I'm glad that like I got to go on there and represent like the normal person, and so I'm like, yes, maybe I'm not like the typical gay Adonis they pictured, but I was like I represented like multiple things besides being gay, being like second gen American, being Mexican.
We don't go out much because I'm like a super grandpa. Like I love to garden, I love to get stoned, I love to eat, I love to watch movies, we play with Legos, we like to create content, and so we're super weird, but we decided to go out one night. Literally this is like the last time I went out. It was like September of last year.
Oh my god.
We were in Dallas and we decided that night we were going to go out, and it was a big deal. It means we had to nap earlier in the day and I had to take some caffeine uppers, and I had to not smoke weed because I cannot smoke weed and go out. Oh no, they do not go well together. So I had to stay sober, and so it was like a Saturday, and we got to the gym and we were ready. We were going to go out. So we went to dinner first, and then we went to this bar called I think Roundup in Dallas.
Is it a gay bar?
It's a gay bar. Okay, Dallas is awesome. I'm a huge Dallas fan. I am obsessed with Dallas. I wish I sort of lived there. I think that it's a beautiful city. People seem nice. There's a lot of fun gay bars, and they're always super packed. At least when I went. It was a Saturday, so maybe it's not always super packed, but it was packed that night. So we went out, and I consider myself a drag king because of how I look. I think people assume I look this way naturally. Well, let me tell you, it's a lot of work. I found myself to be very unattractive growing up, so I knew I wanted to change that. So yes, I've had Botox before. Yes, I've had my skin resurfaced multiple times. Yes, I work out like crazy. I eat very strict, and all because this is my drag. This is how I want to look, you know, and I literally see it the same way. The jeans I'm wearing is like my drag, you know, the outfit. So we were wearing like wife beater tank tops, like a trucker hat. My hair was really long. I had like really baggy jeans, and I thought people were not going to come up to us and talk to us because that's kind of like a weird vibe, weird look. Anyways, so we were at the bar just sitting there, and we were like, we don't even drink, so we had like one alcoholic beverage, and this bar has multiple rooms. So we go in this one room, and everyone is there, and we open the door, and everyone at the same time, there was probably like 100 people, just turned and stared at us like we were entering their space, right? I go, oh no, and just closed the door and like literally walked out, right? And I didn't overthink it, but I was like, that's not the room for us. So we just kind of were hanging out, and then we met a few guys who were like talking to us and like, let them dance, and we were like dancing with them and just kind of just hang out. And they're like, oh, you know, the bar's gonna close. Do you want to come back to our place? We're all gonna hang out. I'm like, I was talking to my partner, I'm like, so what does this mean? What are they asking us? Is this like a sexual thing? Is this like, do we just hang out? It's like 3 a.m. You know, back in the day, I would just go. So let's just go. And we were like, okay, so let's go. And then we decided we weren't gonna go. But we were all leaving, and we're like, yeah, we might meet up with you guys. We'll text you. And one of the guys was like, well, I'll just ride with you. And I'm like, oh
no.
We're stuck.
Now we
but
have
it's fine.
to go.
So we went, and I can't believe I'm talking about this story, but we went to this apartment. The guys that we were there with were all really attractive, and they were super nice. But in talking to them, I realized that they were quite conservative in a lot of their views. Like, they didn't watch drag. They thought drag was kind of strange. They had said some anti-femme type comments. I'm like, it's 2023. Are we really anti-femme anybody? Like, at this point? They were also talking about a lot of the cliques in Dallas, where I guess there's a lot of cliques. I don't live there. I don't know. Please don't come for me. I don't know what the issues are there. But they mentioned that the room we had walked into was like a specific clique, and they're like, oh, you don't want to go in there, that's like, they're like the meanest of all. And I was like, I got that vibe. So they kind of added to that, which I thought was interesting, that there's still so many like cliquey type situations in our community. And then yeah, I don't know if I'm going to say this, but this is the weirdest thing that happened to me. This is why I have not hung out with anybody since. So we were sitting in the guy's apartment. There's 3 of them, and one guy, he doesn't even live in this house. He pulls up his phone, and he's like, we're watching music videos over on the TV, and he pulls up his DMs and his Instagram, and he's going through them on his TV, showing us all the guys that send him DMs. And he's a good-looking guy. Maybe he's trying to like show off. I don't know what the vibe was, why he was doing that, but he was showing us all these guys direct private messages and nudes.
Oh gosh.
On the TV, and we were like, are we drunk? Is this happening in real life? Like, what is the point of this? And so at that moment, I realized maybe it's best to just not have friends.
Oh my god.
You know, literally, I was kind of, I mean, they were so nice though. I would never have assumed that. And then I also think back how many DMs I've sent years ago when I was single. I'm like, oh my God, people have seen me. I didn't know this was a thing. But yeah, it was just really eye-opening into like a piece of what it was to go out, because again, we live in Jacksonville, Florida, and we don't go out here much. When we're at home, in Jacksonville is typically we have more free time and there's nowhere to go. So we just haven't really been very social. And so it was kind of like this eye into what queer culture was going out. And I guess it's very specific to one city, so I shouldn't like stereotype it for everyone, but I didn't love it.
Yeah.
And so
how'd you end up in Austin?
Great question. So the company that sponsors this podcast, Virginity Health, I've been working with them since like the end of 2019, early 2020, so right before the pandemic, and they do men's health, erectile dysfunction, compounded medication. I've been really passionate about ED and men's health for quite some time, only because I feel like it's another medical condition that young men kind of get skipped over. You know, we think of erectile dysfunction as being something just for older people, and there's many aspects of people who have ED on a spectrum, right? There's people who cannot have sex without medication or have severe ED, and there's patients who, you know, want to go multiple times and want to have a really close sexual connection with their partner that lasts hours, and so those medicines can help them for that as well. And so it's been really cool to be in the sexual health field and work with them. They've been so supportive of me in my own journey, whereas a lot of times you work in a company and they're like, you can't do your own thing, no, you have to just be with us. They've really supported me from day one of doing my own thing and letting me kind of spread my wings. And over the years, we've just gotten really close, and their office is headquartered here. And earlier this year, we were like, hey, how can we blend this together and work closer together? And they know I talk a lot, so they're like, let's put you on a podcast. And I was like, absolutely. And it's just been a lot of fun. So I've really enjoyed that. I'm still kind of like learning Austin. I will be honest, I'm not like in love with it yet. I'm getting there. I love the food. The people are so great. The energy is vibrant. I don't love the weather yet. It's been kind of like murky, cloudy, gray. We were driving through North Texas to get here, and it was like sunny and beautiful. And as soon as we got like 30 minutes outside of Austin, it was like clouds and darkness.
It's our April showers.
It's gonna change. I heard the summers are incredible. I can't wait to see Barton Springs. I can't wait to make more friends and have more time here. We live like really close to our office, and it's super loud and like a lot of bars, which is super fun. I think people would love living where I do, but I'm a grandpa.
Yeah.
So it's a little more like chill. So we're learning and making new friends. But yeah, it's been a really cool journey, and I'd never thought I'd live here. And so we're hopefully going to find a house this summer and be able to move into a place that's a little bit more cozy and just continue to lay roots here and then make more friends like you.
No, welcome. And I love what you do. I follow you. And so talking about like, I don't want to say gay medicine. I don't know what term you use, but
but totally. Yeah, medicine that really targets the LGBTQ plus community and mostly gay men. Obviously, at like age 6, I thought I was going to be a doctor. I had no idea what that meant, but I loved going to my pediatrician. I saw kids from my neighborhood there. Their parents were there. We always saw the same doctor. There was like 2 staff members. It looked like a very easy business to run, even at 6. You know, I'm like, I could do this. It's super simple and cozy. And as I got older, I realized it was much more complicated to become a doctor. But a traumatic event happened in my life. I was dating someone who was really toxic for me, and then my stepdad and mom got divorced, and I said, I'm out of here. I got to get out of Jacksonville. What's going to be my ticket out? And I thought school. So I became a doctor, and still with this idea of being a primary care physician where I'd be able to build a community and really build relationships and friendships with my patients. And it's just really difficult when you are seeing a mostly straight population or a conservative population to really feel comfortable being myself. And although they feel comfortable being themselves, it's not a two-way street. And so I didn't love that. And so now being able to have my own practice and connect more with gay men where I have a lot in common with them, they know a lot about me already from social media, which is so cool to feel like they come in already being comfortable with me. It's been like a dream come true. I just can't even explain how privileged I feel to be able to connect with so many people. Like this morning I made 2 new friends who are new patients, and we had appointments, and I'm like, oh my God, like I made 2 new friends today. Like I would never had that experience working in medicine before. My partner really helped with that. I was diagnosed with low testosterone when I was 27, which is not something I loved talking about, especially because I care about how I look and I work out a lot. People assume obviously that I take it just for fitness gains and to like make my body look a certain type of way. And so I was really self-conscious about it and didn't talk about it for many years. And my partner has seen me, you know, when you take testosterone, you inject it. So it's not something that you can really conceal from someone that you're with. And so, he eventually was like, you know, you should really talk about how much it's changed your life and how much it's made your life better, because he's seen it too. I've taken breaks, and he's like, oh, I think, girl, you need to go back on your medicine because you were a little crazy. And so
I love that. Like comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I think of even when I was coming to Arkansas, my doctor, who told me, I think it was one of my students, he was gay. He'd give me the advice. But like, I didn't know about what PrEP was. Like even like anything about it. I remember I'm so lucky. She was a female doctor in Arkansas, and she was pro it. So like thankful for me, but like
for sure,
it's just like something I don't even think. Again, I don't see that on my social. And then even like this sounds funny, but like what brand? A brand sent me like a douche, and like I never knew about like do you have to do this? What is this for? Like, but there's just stuff like that like no one talks about. But I feel like those are like
exactly,
I don't know, important.
I love our banter. We should totally. Please come back. We can continue talking about all kind of stuff.
This was fun.
Yay, me too.
Add us on Instagram at Primary Care Pod. Catch up on past episodes and don't miss out on new ones. Subscribe to the podcast on YouTube, iTunes, and Spotify at Primary Care Pod.